Good evening, everybody. This is the May 5th, 2021 Town Council meeting of Scarborough, Maine. First order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is roll call. Tony?
Counselor Pucci?
Here.
Counselor Gleisteen? Here. Counselor Anderson?
Here.
Counselor Katarina? Here. Counselor Johnson?
Here.
Counselor Hamel?
Here.
And Chairman Johnson?
Here.
All present, thank you.
Item number 4 is general public comments. This is for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. General public comments. Okay, seeing none, I'll close those. Item number 5 is approval of the minutes from the April 21, 2021 regular town council meeting and the April 29 regular 2021 special town council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? No, Tody?
Counselor Pucci?
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen? Yes. Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That's unanimous, thank you.
Item number 7 is items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. Those are complete. Item number 8 is the town manager's report. Mr. Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly budget is first and foremost, amongst other things, but that is getting priority. I think I'll defer to Councilor Clucci as finance chair. Perhaps he'll report on the actual workings of the finance committee, which we're busy with as we speak. I did want to provide an update on the police chief search. We unfortunately had 9 applicants. I was a bit underwhelmed in terms of number, but I was very pleased with the quality. So we have got quality, not quantity. So much so, we'll be interviewing 7 of the 9, 2 of which are internal candidates, which I'm always encouraged to see. I think we've put together a very robust process. We've brought in a town resident to be part of the interview panel. Chairman Johnson will also be included. We're also consulting with some outside help to get guidance. I really want to subject the candidates that passed the first interview anyway to a written product that will probably culminate in some sort of presentation and be a deeper dive in something that's topical, kind of challenge some of the new challenges in law enforcement in the modern age. So I think with the process, I feel pretty good about it, and certainly on paper, the quality of the candidates I feel equally strong about. So first interviews are May 14th, and we'll be following fairly quickly after that, probably a couple weeks following would be second interviews. We're in position to have a new chief named by the time Chief Moulton does retire. So that was the goal, and I think we're well on track. The comp plan, GPCOG continues their work. They are in the final edit stage. They've been going back and forth with staff. I think by the end of this week or early next week, we'll see the final draft from them. I think the intent and hope is to do one final pass by long range planning, who've been living, breathing this for 3 years. I suspect they'll be fairly quick in turnaround. So this, from my perspective, will be in your hands by 1st of June. And I think the goal of council was to adopt it by the end of June. So we should talk further, and I can talk with Councilor Anderson further about process now that it's kind of poised and ready to come to your attention. But from our perspective, you can expect that anytime, around the 1st of June. We'll be meeting tomorrow in leadership. One of the topics will be resuming in-person meetings. I think we've had a couple of meetings, including this one, where the council itself is back. I would mention there are a number of bills in this legislative session around this issue of remote meeting, and they appear to be moving well through the system, have bipartisan support. So I think this will be around to stay. I think the devil will be in the details in terms of how that's actually accomplished. My expectation is most elected officials will be present when they can. If they're vacationing and they want to be remote, that's certainly a possibility, but probably the exception to the rule. But certainly the public being able to participate, view the proceedings and participate in proceedings remotely, I think is a piece that we're going to have to just kind of sort through the logistics of. And I suspect we all agree that that's been one of the silver linings of this this past year is there's kind of an unprecedented access to public affairs and involvement. And it appears as though that's going to continue in the future. And lastly, just an update on Alger Hall. We will be doing a roof replacement. We've selected, after a bid process, Glidden Roofing, a local company, to accomplish that work. I'm pleased to say that's all within the authorization that you granted me. So next order of business is really to think critically about how best to use that to put it to community use. And admittedly, I've put that aside, but I need to get back to that. So the good news is we've purchased the building, we've kind of secured it externally, and now we need to think critically about how best to use it for the community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the town manager? Seeing none, I will move on. Item number 9 is a non-action item. It's an update on the main housing lease at Fairfield Inn. As a reminder to all of us, a couple months back, we expressed our support for the Preble Street Resource Center and I believe other entities to have a lease of the Fairfield Inn on Cummings Avenue, I believe. And one of the things that we had said was, hey, we would appreciate a check-in in May. So true to their word and true to ours, this is our check-in. And I believe, Tom, do you know who I'm asking to speak?
There's a number of folks in attendance. I know Steve McDermott for certain, I believe.
If you're the right person to speak, if you want to just raise your hand, Stephen, I think I can bring you in.
Denise Lord,
Okay.
Mark Swan.
I got him. He's coming in. Yep. All right, Stephen, we can hear you here and go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us, and we appreciate your continued support and ongoing conversation around the topic of providing quarantine and isolation shelter and emergency shelter to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. What I wanted to do was provide an update on how the programs have been utilized since January 28th. What we're looking towards for the future and some of the challenges that we experienced and what we've put in place to ameliorate those challenges and the continued conversations we're having around them. So initially, when we came and talked to you, the program was designed to have 41 rooms for quarantine and isolation and 73 rooms for individuals experiencing homelessness. What we didn't know as we were planning for the transition, that an outbreak would be identified at a local emergency shelter on January 26th, with a second outbreak occurring at another local emergency shelter on February 4th. These outbreaks resulted in a significant more number of individuals needing quarantine or isolation than we had seen to date through the pandemic, which resulted in a paradigm shift in how we looked at utilizing the hotel and a shift in the staffing pattern that was needed by Preble Street and the services that would be provided on site. So with that, essentially what happened is the entire hotel became a quarantine and isolation shelter at that point, with no emergency shelter being provided until February 2nd, and only 8 beds were provided at that point. As the population in quarantine and isolation decreased, knowing that quarantine and isolation, I think quarantine at that point was still 14 days, but soon after or just before had reduced to 10 days. So quarantine and isolation is a 10-day period. I provided some numbers just to demonstrate how significant the quarantine and isolation population was from January 28th to March 1st. It was 208 individuals who utilized the hotel for quarantine and isolation. And just to give some picture, between March 2nd to April 28th, only 80 individuals utilized the quarantine and isolation segment of the shelter. So really still a significant amount of community members. So since then, the number of beds have rotated back to what we had previously expected to be in terms of ratio. There's an ongoing need for this type of temporary non-congregate sheltering due to the reduced shelter capacity at traditional shelters, and really the reduction in availability or access to traditional natural support, staying with family members, staying with friends in the community. Traditionally, young individuals may be able to couch surf, but due to fears over the spread of COVID-19, those resources aren't available to them. We're able to continue to provide this valuable resource to our communities through the use of the public assistance program provided by FEMA through September 30th. And we have been meeting with Preble Street staff weekly to plan, develop, and implement a depopulation plan that's responsive to the individuals served and to meet the community needs. So We've identified what would be an 8-week titrate down so individuals are prepared. We aren't increasing the census as we plan to decrease, and we move towards permanent and stable housing for all of the guests.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McDermott? Councilor Gleason?
So I guess I did have a question. So there's another Days Inn. Is that a similar? It's right over the border, but is that a similar type shelter at this point?
The Days Inn, yes, ma'am. Without quarantine and isolation.
So that one is just the temporary emergency shelter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you have numbers on how many folks are there
At the Fairfield?
at the Days Inn?
Not prepared this evening.
And so you said you have staff on site. How many staff do you have on 24 hours a day? How many staff is it?
Yeah, I'd prefer to defer to Henry, Daniela, or Mark from Preble Street onto the on-site staffing pattern as it's changed and evolved. So they've asked for increases at times. So we've approved those increases to staff.
Okay. And then is it funded in the state budget, the depopulation, the 8-week, to put people in stable housing? Is that going to be funded through the state budget, or how's that going to be funded?
So that would be using a variety of different resources. One new resource is like a rapid rehousing program, diversion programs, or existing programs such as project-based vouchers or housing choice vouchers for individuals.
Okay.
So really looking at a mix of existing and new programs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Henry-
Thank you.
Henry Meyer, are you the right person to speak to? I just unmuted you. Are you the right person to speak to the staffing question?
Sure, I can speak to that. We have 6 people on staff at all times. That number drops down to 5 at night. But for the rest of the day, we have 6 people on staff, and we're actually in the process of increasing that number to 7 right now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
So Tom, what was the town's experience, as this started out? So did you have meetings with the folks involved, or so how have you seen it evolve since it started?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say our experience was a bit rocky in the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. I think, as Steve alluded to, frankly, they were met with an unprecedented and unexpected switch in demand. They're also onboarding brand new staff. And so there were some rocky patches getting up and running. We did ask for a meeting with staff at some point in mid-February, as I recall, based on some of that initial experience, and have had really good response since. So there's good direct communication between particularly members of the police department. Lauren, our social service navigator, is probably the one that's most directly in contact. I know she and Henry are in fairly constant contact, but certainly others are as well. I will say, just to kind of put some data around it, we have responded since the beginning of the operation. I had the number here. There's about 70 calls for service, and that's fire, EMS. I haven't kind of broken that out between police, fire, and EMS. And that's for all sorts of reasons. So I don't mean to suggest anything by that, but I'm just trying to provide some data in terms of what it has meant to us. But in a nutshell, we've been pleased with the responsiveness with the staff. And we also acknowledge that much of the population and their residents at that facility are experiencing short or long-term chronic homelessness. And there's often underlying reasons for that, whether it's mental health or substance abuse. And so there are some challenges that come with that. These are issues that we're certainly not surprised with, and we're doing our best to help support them, but certainly pleased to have professional staff on site 24/7. I don't think it would be workable without that, frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Henry and Stephen, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you guys coming back and keeping us updated.
Thank you very much. In running through the presentation, I neglected to thank Tom, Lauren, Chief Moulton, and Liam for really consistently opening up dialogue when there are questions or challenges so that we can improve the program design and ensure we're meeting the needs of, again, this individual served and the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With that, we're going to move on to order number 21-036. It's a 7 PM public hearing only on the proposed FY 2022 municipal school budget. If you are in the public and would like to speak to this, please raise your hand. I think this is appropriate. I will have Councilor Clucci, who's the head of finance. I'll have you do your finance committee update now. That way, if people are tuning in for this specifically, the public can hear it now. So before I get to the public, Councilor Clucci, would you like to give an update of where we are? And then I'll go to the public.
Yeah, I'll give a brief update. So as certainly the council remembers that at first reading, when we received the proposed budget, we made an amendment that reduced the amount that we'll collect from the taxpayer by 3.4 million. And really the focus of the finance committee has been to vet both the spending and revenue numbers for the different departments on a very detailed basis. And we've done that for the school department, public safety, public works, and we're going to do that for general government next week. Now, things have trended pretty favorably towards actually achieving our goal of a 3% or lower mill rate target. In fact, I had a meeting with staff this week to start hopefully creating some of the mechanics for what might be some capital reserve funds, which is something that's been a desire for quite some time for us. So I expect that we might be able to look at something at our next finance committee meeting, which is next Wednesday, on that. And also we're working through a detailed itemization of changes to the budget that have happened since it was first proposed to us, either due to finance or staff recommendations, so that we can have a running tally as we move on from here. After the review next week for general government, we're going to go over our debt and capital improvement plan in some detail the following week on the 19th. And then on the 24th, which is the following Monday, we're going to have a town council workshop to review the finance committee recommendations and any other outstanding issues that councilors may have. And then on the 26th, we are scheduled to have our second reading and vote on the proposed budget as may be amended. So really, I guess what I'm looking for from the council right now, if you've been following or not, is we have opportunity to, we've received what's been proposed by staff. If there are items that we're not comfortable moving forward, or that we would like to, that aren't there, that should be there, we feel like should be there, there's opportunity through this process for us to work some of those in or out. And I guess I'd be receptive to any feedback that councilors might have to that end.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. No, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Geez, would you stop? Mr. Clucci, when did you say we were doing a workshop?
Workshop is on the 24th,
On Monday?
which is a Monday.
Uh-oh, okay.
We'll work
I
that
have a
out.
conflict, but anyway.
Okay.
With that, are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Just raise your hand. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on the budget. Yes, sir.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely. Let's not devolve this into our debate, though. So you're going to get the only comment. I'm not going to call anybody else. Mr. Hamel?
Maybe I'll just wait.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
you know what?
No, one
Thank you. No, what?
So John made a process suggestion here, or can I help this with the process? So I maybe like to try to call this out at the outset. One thing that would be helpful, and I'm not sure, but I'm guessing I might be speaking for some members of the public, but when I see a document like this, I have a hard time understanding how we got to this from what was presented to us originally. So, you know, anything that provides us with some, even a high level cause of change would be very, very helpful.
And I think we're getting that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so.
But you want to reiterate that because that is a good, yeah.
I have a draft. We're working through it. It's going to be at the account level, very detailed, so that you'll know exactly where we're coming up with that 3.4 million or whatever the number is. Yeah.
And I want to reassure the public that this was not all staged to make John look really good, that he already had the answer before I asked the question. The second thing I would like to say, and this may also be in the bag, is that I think it would be the dates are troubling to me. Okay, we're going to see the big reveal for us in terms of detail will be on a Monday, May 24th, and kaboom, on Wednesday, May 26th, we got to decide. That's not a lot of wiggle room. And there's still a lot of variables. I mentioned this at the very beginning when Tom laid out the budget. I said, this is stimulus year. I'm still waiting for the decoder ring on how that's all going to work. So that's not a lot of time for us to get educated, be smart, make the right calls, and do all that in 48 hours. So I would just, those are my 2 points. And thank you, Mr. Johnson, Chair Johnson, for giving me the time.
So I guess the response is we have leadership tomorrow. We can bang this around. If a schedule makes, if a different schedule makes sense, we'll come up with it, right? And we'll just blast it from the rooftop. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't touch on that quite enough. The items in motion relate to forces outside of our control, right? And federal funding, we don't have any money budgeted for that currently. I expect that we will at some point. And this is why when I say things are trending favorably, I think we're going to be able to use some of it. Same thing on the state level there, with revenue sharing, and now I'm hearing there may be other pieces in motion as well. We expect there to be a benefit there, but we don't know the details yet. So it's not fully contemplated in the budget. We're trying to take a measured approach. And honestly, the reason I wanted to have that meeting towards the end is with the hope that we're going to know some of those facts at that time.
So trending well, we're optimistic, and details to follow.
Yeah, we have a lot of details, but some of the unknowns are still out there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. With order number 21039 is a public hearing only on the proposed changes to chapter 601, the town of Scarborough traffic ordinance, section 4.2 Pine Point Co-op. And is there anybody that would like to speak to this? This is just a public hearing. Seeing none, I will close that. Order number 21043 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the following new request for a food handler's license from Leanne Denon, located at 4 Leah Lane in Southern Maine Market LLC, DBA Higgins Beach Market, located at 81 Spurwick Road. Tody, is everything in order?
Everything is in order, yes.
Okay, before we take action, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion? Tody?
Counselor Clucci?
yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next is order number 2144. It's a 7 PM public hearing and action on the following new request for a massage therapist license from Marie Ann Dittmer, located at 27 Gorham Road, Suite 204.
Everything is in order, and this is actually someone that's had a license, let it expire, it's coming back with a different, she's
Yeah.
not a combination.
Thank you.
Just
Any members of-
massage therapy.
Any members of the public? With that, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? This is my first office 20 years ago, so that's my only tidbit. With that, Tody?
Counselor Clucci?
yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 21029 is a second reading on the request to repeal and replace chapter 413, the Town of Scarborough Growth Management Ordinance. This is sponsored by Councilors Johnson and Cloutier. So I'm sure there's members of the public. So I think what I'll do first is bring it up, talk about it, and then I'll go to members of the public before we discuss it. So just bear with me. I want to share my screen here.
Chairman Johnson, I'm just asking, do you have the PDF of the meeting agenda?
I do. I downloaded the workshop one on accident, so I'm just going to grab it.
Good.
Yeah.
And yeah, grab the one that's up there now.
Yep, it's my fault. So just give everybody bear with me. I'm just going to pull this up. Okay. Bookmarks, we are on 21-029. Yep, got it. So just as a quick, because this is a repeal and replace, I do want to, I think at this point, we're pretty well familiar with this version. Just to be clear, we're not going to actually pass this with different colors. It's color code coordinated just to have some context for the public and for us to level set where we are. The blue on this document is essentially from first reading. We then had a workshop. The blue on this document is what we worked from during the workshop. And then the red on this document is a result of the workshop. So with that, I will just hit some of the highlights, and I'm not going to be ultra detailed, but I think some of the highlights are in order. As a result of the workshop, a counselor or two suggested defining workforce housing, that'd be interesting, workforce housing, defining it as availability for people earning between 80% and 120% of the area median income. As a result of the workshop, multifamily units outside of the downs, this is the 1-bedroom exemption, which has been come to known. I'll make it easy and speak some plain language. The 1-bedroom exemption, as a result of the workshop, puts a maximum of 70 dwelling units shall be exempt for the next 3 years. So as a result of the workshop, the 1-bedroom exemption has now turned into a 1-bedroom exemption for the first 70, and that expires in 2023. As a result of the workshop, there is a maximum, as a result of the workshop for the CPD, the Crossroads Plan District, which lots of the public calls the Downs, it's a maximum of 100 multifamily dwelling units, and that is going to expire in 2023. I do have an amendment to clean that up, but I will present that when it's absolutely appropriate, and I'll explain it.
Is that 100 a year or 100 through the 3 years?
It's 100 total, and it's whatever comes first.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So the code enforcement officer, and this is the red. If you stay with me for a little bit and you've been following along, we've been trying to find a way to take care of some of these smaller landowners that currently can't get permits. In red, this is giving the code enforcement officer for the rest of this calendar year the ability to issue 48 building permits without a growth permit. And what that does is that takes care of the people we've been concerned about in the wait list, but it does not add to our annual allocation, so it does not increase our rolling average. That is an eloquent way to do the same thing, but create less permits. In red, as a result of the workshop, there are 10 detached single-family dwellings would be exempt that qualify for the affordable housing definition that I alluded to earlier. In red, as part of the workshop and part of, frankly, that also covers the short-term exemption for the Crossroad Plan District. It is also allowing the Crossroad Plan District to have 30% of the annual allocation. Right now, we have a clause in there that essentially says, hey, if you have the same ownership structure or you're related in a business sense, you can take up to 20% of the permits for the year. This increases it for the Crossroad Planning District to 30%. And as a result of the workshop, it is instead of reviewing this the required 3 years, it has been proposed that we review this every 2 years. And it also brings in, I think, some good language tying it directly to the comprehensive plan. As a result of the workshop in red, it makes the effective date June 1 instead of July 1. I believe the green, I'm not sure what the green said, but it's just a cleanup of the language. And as a result of the workshop in red, it has a reporting mechanism that is a first step effort to make this stuff a lot more trackable, by us and by members of the public. I'll just point you to the last letter of the reporting. It says that the listings shall be made accessible to the public on file and through the town website. So we are by law requiring that this information be accessible through our town website. So I'm sure everybody read that. That was here tonight, but just that's a quick overview. That is my synopsis. And so with that,
So
I-
a point of information,
yep,
Mr. Chair. So I believe when we asked the town manager about this, is someone going to be making, so these are all amendments, whether they're blue or red, as I understand it, they're all amendments from first read. Is that correct?
that's correct. But I believe it's going to be brought forth as a wholesale change. So I'll let Tony answer that. Do you want to answer it, Tony, just to help me? Or Tom, either one.
Yeah, technically, these are all changes from first reading, yes. We have consulted with the town attorney, and for ease of administration and offering the motion, I believe a counselor will be offering a replacement, if you will. So effectively, all that the chairman just reviewed would be moved in one motion.
And when was this posted to the website?
Friday. And I think it was initially Friday, and then with changes over the weekend, a new version posted mid-morning Monday.
No, I thought it was Tuesday. It was Monday?
Tony corrects me. She said Tuesday morning. I beg your pardon.
So this exact one that Paul just showed, that was put out Tuesday morning.
With the exception of the green language, 2 words in section 12, and that was a function of input from the planning director that came this afternoon. I believe you received that as an email.
So the
Like
email
today?
at 4 o'clock or something, I wasn't able to process it, but so there's green in here or?
They're just 2 words. It adds the words building permits.
Okay, yeah, you said it was like minor edits. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That was just point of information. Thank you.
Okay, with that, before we discuss it, I'm going to bring it to the public. So if you're in the public and like to speak to us, please raise your hand. I'm going to close out online. If nobody raises their hand, I'll go to the people in the audience. Elizabeth, you are first, and then Wallace, you are second.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Von Stoddy. I live on Ferry Road. First of all, I want to thank you guys for your work on this growth management ordinance. I know a lot of time and thought have gone into it, and as it should, because it is a document that needs to stand the test of time. And you started it something like 18 months ago, but it feels like things have really heated up in the last few weeks. I've watched the meetings and you guys have listened. I've seen you argue, you've made changes as recently as yesterday. And I really do appreciate your responsiveness. But I want to say that now is the time to digest those proposed changes, to take the time and do the work to understand what are the consequences of this plan you're proposing. You know, where are the analyses of the impact on traffic, on municipal services, waste disposal, natural resources? If you've done the work, please show it with the public. I've watched the meetings and it seems like many of you are really sold on this fast growth path forward, but you really have not brought the public along. If you could help us understand why growing this fast is supposed to be a good thing, that would be really helpful. So please show us. The GMO is a really important document. It's a blueprint for growth, and it needs to be vetted and it needs to stand the test of time. It's not an annual document like a school budget or a town budget. It's got to be built to last. And that means taking the time to get it right now and allow the public to understand what it means for Scarborough. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Wallace or Mr. Fengler, you are up next. And you're on mute.
I would just, am I unmuted now?
Yep, you're good.
I just would like to add, what is the total impact per year? How many new people are we talking about for providing services to? If these exemptions and permits and what's the total impact?
Is that your public comment or?
That's my
Okay.
question.
Okay, thank you very much. Jeremy or Mr. Winterstein, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Jeremy Winterstein, 22 Winslow Homer Road. I am not a year-round resident, but my family owns property on Winslow Homer Road. Thank you very much for all your work on this. I really appreciate it, and it is a complicated issue, so I appreciate everybody's hard work on it. My 2 cents is, I just believe Scarborough is just growing way too fast, and I hope that you will listen to the input that you've received and incorporate that into whatever decision you make. I'd also like to pass on that I really believe that the comprehensive plan should come first before the passage of the GMO. And one question I ask is, there are a lot of demand for services that are going to come with this residential growth. And a lot of those services are not school related. It's sewer, it's police, it's fire, it's the need for residents to enjoy the natural resources. So there's a lot of non-school demand that's going to put pressure on the town. I just don't think the town can keep up with the pace of growth as it currently stands. And I also worry that the GMO has so many loopholes and exemptions that it defeats the purpose of the GMO. So that's my 2 cents. And I just want to say thank you very much for everybody's work on this. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you are online and like to comment, you got to put your hand up or I will end public comment. So I know everybody likes to get the last word, but you need to raise your hand. Mr. McGee.
Hi, Nick McGee, 8 Riverwoods Drive. Thanks for having me on. I have to say, thank you for making some improvements over the first read. Just a couple of concerns. In general, one, I think it's probably clear to most of the council or anyone that knows me, I am concerned about the pace of growth in town. 2, reading through the document, I also worry about carving out exemptions for certain zones or developments. I think we should probably treat all of the developments in the area fairly with access to the permits that are at hand. And 3, I would say that under the reporting section, I think it's much needed. I would ever encourage the council to consider traffic impacts as something that's gathered and calculated as far as a quality of life stance goes for all of us around us, and also so we have a better understanding of the transportation and infrastructure needs that might need to be improved down the road based on how much vehicle traffic you might be adding to the mix. So that's my initial comments. I'll also kind of echo, I guess the first comment, I hope there's another opportunity to digest this a little bit further. I feel like some of those changes came around quickly, and I wish to have a little bit more time to do a deeper dive on it. But in general, I would say it is better than the first version. So thanks and good luck tonight.
Thank you, sir. Any others? Okay, with Ms. Bristol is going to be the last one to speak since she's the last one with her hands up. Allison, you are ready.
Can you hear me?
You can, yep.
Good evening, Alison Bristol, 6 Bayview Avenue. And I just wanted to speak in support of the other folks that have made public comment this evening. I appreciate that our changes in the ordinance. I agree that it's gone very fast. And while I appreciate that there has been discussion about this for a long, long time, an actual ordinance draft has been moving very quickly, and it's really hard for the public to form an opinion about what's being proposed if they don't see exactly what the draft looks like. A couple of things that I would add. Well, first of all, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this was offline for a while today. So the most recent changes I saw, I think, and I could be wrong, were as late as maybe a couple hours before the meeting. But more of a question when you talk about the percentage of permits that would be issued. with the 30% number in the Crossroads Development District issued to a common scheme of development. I'm not sure exactly what that means. And again, forgive me if I'm not that familiar with this, but from what I understand from listening to other meetings, there are areas of the Crossroads that have been subdivided. So does that 30% mean they can have 30% of the permits in each subdivision or within the Crossroads in its entirety? And then the other question is with what's proposed here, what does that mean to the mean number of growth permits issued during a 10-year period? Meaning that, we'll continue to grow at a fast clip with everything that's been proposed here. Thank you all very much for your work on this. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Allison. Mr. Walton, I think I clearly said Allison was the last one. You guys got to raise your hand, all right? I know everybody wants the last word, but you're making my job awfully tough, and let's all work together here.
I'm so sorry. I'll be super brief. I think it's clear. Thank you all. I think it's just clear that the public doesn't really know what is going on. So really, it's just a question. How comfortable are you guys passing it as is with so little of the public understanding this? That's just a question for you as you debate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody in the physical audience like to speak?
Good evening, Rocky Risbara, 287 Blackstone Road, Holdings.
Yeah, I think so.
Just wanted to let you know that Dan Bacon is here tonight. Dan Bacon is here tonight, and
I'm sorry, Paul, is he at a mic? Because
Yeah, thank you. I didn't think it was on. Give me 1 second here. Here, Councilor Clucci will give him his mic. It's fine. It's a 6-foot cord, so we're good.
I'll hold it over here.
Yeah.
Just Rocky Risbara, 287 Black Point Road, representing Crossroad Holdings. Dan Bacon and I are here tonight in attendance to answer any questions you might have. We've given an awful lot of information to the council in the last short period of time. I know some of it might be a little bit confusing, and I think we're here to answer any questions, and appreciate your working on this growth management ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the mic's working now, so if there's anything else. There's one more coming.
Hi, Mark O'Leary, 35 Arborview Lane. Thank you for your due diligence. You guys put a lot into this. Can I get a breakdown of the building permit, the growth permits that were put out for 22 that would expire that you spoke of? And I wasn't real clear on what happens if you have those right now.
How would I have somebody email you? Just because you're with public comment, I'll have you do the public comment and we'll email to you. But I believe the way it's written right now is they have 180 days to use them until they expire. But do you want to?
But does that mean from now or the start of the year?
If you're talking about the current growth permits that you're holding now?
I've got growth permits for 21 and for 22. And I had planned to use the 22 and 22.
Correct. So you are on the waiting list for 22. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yes. So let us do our debate and we'll answer in our comments. How's
Okay.
that? Yeah.
Thanks.
Just I don't want to treat you any different than anybody on. Lots of rhetorical questions were asked and we didn't respond. So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, Councilor Clucci, I believe we'll put it on the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to move approval of the second reading to repeal and replace Chapter 413, the Town of Scarborough Growth Management Ordinance, with the document as presented in the Town Council packet this evening.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And with that discussion, Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm a visual. I think lots of folks are. If you could share the screen, the email I sent you, could you possibly do that?
I will. You just got to give me 1 minute here, okay?
Okay, while the chair is pulling up a little visual, I just want to, because I just want to walk quickly where we are and where we hope and think we're going. This is, definitely an emotional and a complex item before us. It has been worked for 16 months. We have had 5 workshops. There's been plenty of opportunity for public input, so I fully don't understand those comments, but each their own. So what is a GMO? A GMO is the authority given by the state of Maine for a municipality to be able to manage the pace of growth year over year, okay? So that's the number of homes, dwellings, units, whatever you want to call them, year over year. The town can opt out of the GMO. And you can imagine we have a current GMO, what it would be like if you think there's a lot of building going on. Without a GMO, I'm sure the developers would like that. But the state mandates also a minimum of permitting per year. In this new GMO, our minimum is 144 units. Or 144 permits. That's mandated by the state. That's not a number that we came up with. That is what we have to do. And as soon as we can get that chart up, any pressure?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. There, how's that chart look?
Yeah.
Here a second.
All right, I don't want to put you on the
No,
spot.
I got it. Just Betsy's heading some way. Let me.
Betsy, could you tilt to the side, please?
Yeah, she actually helped me there. You got, thanks. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Before 2000, we didn't have a GMO in the town. I've been in the town for 39 years. Growth has been an issue probably for each and every one of those 39 years. I ran on growth. People have reminded me that of several times during this process. I have spent a lot of time on growth. I feel this product that we're coming forward. Here we go. Any way we can make this big?
Yep,
Bigger.
bear with me.
Okay.
It's not like running at home. It's a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Again, this is just a visual, folks, and I could ask the chair if you could put the cursor over on that blue line that runs right above the number 100, right there. That runs across the span of time from 2011 to 2020. That is our current annual allocation of permits, 135. The bar chart shows you the actual growth against those permits. And I don't know where you went to school, but I know when I look at year 2017, I see 499. That doesn't equal 135 to me. So it gets confusing. So what we had done over time was we fractionalized our permits and we got more units per permit. This new GMO removes that. A permit is a permit. You get one permit, whether it's a single bedroom apartment, a 5-bedroom McMansion, and everything in between. So that blue line is going to be 144, which is mandated again by the state. Okay, so there'll be no more splitting of the permits. It's 144 and 144 only. And anything over and above that 144 has to be brought forward to the council. The council process will be open to the public. There'll be a very strict criteria that a developer, even a single person wanting the permits has to meet. And if they do meet that criteria, then they may be permitted to have those permits. That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Clucci and then Counselor Gleisten.
Yeah, I'd like to thank my fellow counselors. This has really been probably more so than any other piece of work that I've worked on collaborative. It's really, and it's benefited from the process. So we started at first reading with a paradigm shift from the old way, which included fractionalization and reserve pool, to a new way of doing it that I think puts us in control of the train. All right, so right now we've been reacting or experiencing a lot of growth, as was just shown on the chart, right? Well, under the current framework, that's just going to continue and it's going to compound. What this does is it allows us to smooth the curve, not stop it. We're not blunt force stopping it right now, but it's going to take council action to go over that again. And that was a compromise. We're allowing some development to continue right now when we know that prices are skyrocketing and that there's a ripe opportunity for it. But the trade-off is that a couple of years from now, a lot of these exemptions expire, right? So you're going to be stuck with your annual average, or you're going to have to get specific approval otherwise. I spent a good portion of my day today trying to locate chlorine, right? I run a motel and I have a pool. And unbeknownst to me, there's a massive shortage on chlorine products. So I went to every pool distributor in the area and, I could get 8 pounds here, 10 pounds here. And, 3 years ago, I had a quote done for an automatic injection system where those chemicals are actually still available, right? So now I'm going to wind up having to do that project for probably 3-4 times the cost it would have cost me a couple of years ago. But I guess I'm using this as an example of what happens when you stop the train in its tracks. There are unintended consequences. And right now, our ordinance is stopping people from making money on their property or moving to town. And this is going to ease that stress a little bit. It's not perfect, but I'm fully comfortable with it as it reads. And I really think the public input and counselor input and feedback has helped us get it to a pretty good place.
Councilor Gladstein?
Yeah, I think Ken hit on, some points that I definitely was, the mandated by the state for the 144 permits. How did we get there? And the graph he showed it had to do with the reserve pool as well as the fractionalization, which has been confusing. And that's how we got the average up to 135, because if you go further back in the chart that Ken showed, we grew well under 135 for a number of years. So how did we get to that point? And it was through an addition to the reserve pool and through the fractionalization. So I thought that was a very helpful slide. I guess I have a couple of questions, for some of the comments. So there are still some exemptions that don't come before the counselor, but I guess the council, but a difference is we've capped them since the first read. So, we didn't talk about these specifically, but the multi-family dwellings of 750 square feet of 1 bedroom or less can grow by 70 units total. That's what you're saying, Paul, right? Not 70 years, 70 total.
Yeah, so the sunset date is 2023. So whether once it hits 70, that will be done, or if 70 units don't happen between 2023, that will also execute it. So whatever comes first, the end of 2023 or 70 units.
Right. So before that didn't have a cap.
Yeah, that's a result of the workshop. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, before
Right.
the workshop, that was uncapped and now it's capped at 70.
Right. So just to talk that through, that's capped now. So, and so that is similar to, I think you're going to make some changes to what's in the crossroad, but that's similar to that. So the comments, I think, because obviously, I guess all of us hopefully have talked to folks quite a bit, and Councilor Johnson made a comment, and I kind of think that some members of the public have kind of been given a little bit of a hard time about saying this happened quickly. So I've been, spending a lot of time going back through how we got here, from actually past councils and here. And we had a couple of meetings early on, April 16th, 2020 and June 16th, 2020. And those were pretty short discussions on the growth. So not a lot happened there. I think the first substantive meeting was August 20th, 2020. And that was a review of the Long Range Planning Committee discussion. And, just in that meeting, Councilor Katarina reminded people that that was still fact finding and there would be nothing specific, but it was a very thoughtful meeting. And I attended that Long Range Planning Committee meeting where that was also a thoughtful meeting. In 1022, Jay just gave a brief overview, and there was a couple of different meetings up to that point where, the plan was Jay was going to bring something specific forward. And there was a plan to meet in November, but there wasn't a meeting in November. So in my opinion, sort of some of the real meat, started January 7th, 2021. And there was a meeting with the BOE, and that actually, the BOE some BOE members didn't speak too much, but there was a lot of input from counselors in that ordinance committee meeting. And then January 21st, there was a long and really informative meeting with the developers, and the town manager started out comments in that meeting saying, they'd hope to have more specifics, but that maybe it was good that developers were getting in on the ground floor, and each developer was asked a series of questions about some things in the current growth ordinance. So in February 18th, 2021, there was a few more specifics that came out in the form of a PowerPoint presentation that was given by Paul and John. And then there were, there was nothing about the exemptions, but there was talk about getting rid of fractionalization. So I went back through that whole PowerPoint, and then, maybe some of the council exemption type things were discussed in that, and some tightening. And there were some goals discussed in that. And that was, and to talk about eliminating the reserve pool. But some of the things that came out at first read were not discussed there. Then the next thing that happened was a council workshop. So again, there was a few details there, but nothing like we're looking at now. So in 317, we had a sort of high-flung workshop that I guess in the end, none of us were happy with. But, I think we all thought, there should be more detail that came out of that quickly. And then what happened next was we got some substantive changes. So the real detail of what you saw came out to counselors from two other counselors. And that was on March 25th. And on March 26th, we were asked to feedback, and we were told we were going to go to first read with that. So, and then we did on April 7th. And that agenda on April 7th is a little confusing because what we'd been sent by email actually it wasn't really a marked up copy of the ordinance. At that point, we were amending the old ordinance, it seemed like. And about 3 hours before the meeting on April 7th, before the first read, the public agenda changed from amend the GMO to repeal and replace. And so that's kind of where we were at that point. And then with the last workshop, that was really this first substantive conversation. And I'll take my lumps and part in maybe distracting some of the conversation on, at first read. I did vote for first read. Anybody who knows me, knows that if I'm not for something, I don't vote for it on first read. But that's how strongly I felt that I wanted us to get this work done, and I wanted to work as a council. Less than a week ago, we had a very productive workshop, I think. And then we've had a lot of behind the scenes email since that point. And I believe there was a meeting with Paul and John and the Downs to kind of work what's going to come out tonight later with some exemptions. Most counselors were not in those meetings, just those two. And so I say all this because I think that's where the public is coming from, Ken. And I did want to do something tonight that, that maybe is a little different. I checked with Tody ahead of time about how this worked because I wanted to make a motion. I wanted to move that we postpone this matter until May 19th. And I'm wording this very specifically because the motion to postpone actually can be debated. And in that debate, you can actually debate still the main motion. So I have a couple of, caveats for that motion. And then as we discuss it, people can actually discuss both things, the validity of what the public asked for tonight, some time to digest this, as well as continue to discuss the main motion. And I'm not making any amendment to change anything in what we're seeing tonight or from the effective date of June 1st. So I will go ahead and make that motion. And then I do have some comments on that, but I'd like to move that we postpone this matter until May 19th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll move the question to postpone. Tony?
No.
Can't hear Tody. If she's talking, Paul,
I
she's
moved it.
can't hear her.
Move the question.
So sorry. Counselor Gleisteen, to move the question.
I'm sorry?
I made a motion to move the question, so I'm forcing a vote on the postpone.
Oh, so you're ending debate?
I don't think it started, but yes, I'm closing debate. Yep, you put something on the table. I don't.
Yeah, that takes 2/3 vote.
Yep, yeah, I'm just following the parliamentary procedures. Yeah, so I'm moving the question on, right now, the motion on the floor, just so we're all clear,
No discussion.
is the motion on the floor is to postpone. Right, it's been seconded. So what's on the floor is to postpone. And I'm moving that question. So we are voting yes or no to postpone right now, is what we're doing.
Right, point of information.
Yep. There's no discussion when you move the question, but you can do the point of information, sure.
Point of information. So will that stop debate on the main motion? Because as I understand it, we can debate the postponement at the same time we debate the main motion.
Yeah, I think you're correct, but I think what is on the table is the motion to postpone, and I'm just calling the vote only on that. I'm not calling the vote on anything else. Because they stack on top of each other. So the one that you put on top of the stack is the motion to postpone, and that's the one that I am calling a vote on now.
Correct. The motion to postpone is a privileged motion. It must be dealt with and dispensed with before you proceed back to your regular business.
That's correct.
Call the vote.
Okay, that's correct. Yeah. So, Counselor Clucci. This is to postpone.
Right. I already voted, but
Okay.
no.
Counselor Gleisteen,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
No.
Counselor Johnson,
No.
Counselor Hamel,
No.
and Chairman Johnson.
No. So we're back to the main motion. Discussion on the main motion. Any more? Councilor Anderson?
So I'm going to share some data too, and it was my own assessment from Councilor Clucci's data that he shared. That was from the assessor's data, which I thought was great. So first, I want to thank everybody because I think last week after we had the workshop, I think we got to a much better point, and I'm really pleased with where we landed tonight. I think the biggest concern I've heard from folks, again, has been about the pace of growth that the town has been experiencing, more so as of recent. So when I looked at the 2018, 2019, and 2020 data provided by Councilor Clucci, that's about 300 units per year that on average we've had in those 3 years. And then when I look at what we have on the floor today and what we're debating, it's closer to 235 units per year. And so that's a reduction in about 20%. And that's what's certain is the numbers that we have in here today, which I think is good. I think what is excluded that was included in the past are things like affordable housing, contract zones, and town council exemptions. And I'm comfortable moving forward with those the way they are because I know that there's significant process in place that we would have to look at and debate each one of those. So for contract zones and the town council exemptions, that requires a supermajority of the council. And we all know for affordable housing, those are usually coupled with CEAs or requiring additional town financing to support the project so that they can get further state financing. And those would have to be debated and reviewed by the council. So I think there'll be plenty of opportunity for the public to be involved in those types of exemptions. And I really appreciate Councillor Johnson's comments last week about how this really does put a lot more accountability on the council. And so if you're not happy with the decisions that are made on those, it really is on us, and you should consider that when you vote in the future. I think while we all kind of have different views on the council in terms of the pace of growth, I really do think that this is a good compromise. I personally am much more supportive of a slower pace, but I also understand that we're a body that is trying to work together on a solution, considering all kinds of different viewpoints. So while I think at best this might slow growth, I think the reality is it's going to keep us on the same pace once these exemptions are accounted for. I think the 1 bedroom, the change there is good that we've added that cap. I really appreciate the council kind of taking that into consideration and making sure that moves forward. I think getting rid of the fractionalization that Councillor Johnson mentioned is going to make it so much easier for the public to understand what's going on. I appreciate adding the reporting mechanism because I think this has been a very complicated matter, I think, initially to try and get a grasp on the data. And I think having that going forward will help. And just to remind folks, this is for 3 years. This is what the term of this particular ordinance. We have to review it every 3 years. And so a lot of these changes we're going to learn from, and we'll make adjustments in 3 years. And as was stated, some of these things are very short-term in nature. So while I did say it's around 235 units per year, it's going to definitely be more front-loaded likely. But overall, over the 3 years, I think it could likely be a slower pace. And I feel like people did listen to that concern. I do think that there's still work to be done based on the comments that were made around exploring how do we, manage conservation, ensure, that we have all the right infrastructure, traffic. I don't know if I think the GMO is the tool to kind of do that. I think that's more work that this council needs to do through other mechanisms to really assess those opportunities and continually evaluate from a policy perspective what we need to do and what we need to put in place and what we need to invest in order to make that happen. So this is going to get my support tonight. I do wish that we would give the public a little bit more time to digest it. I feel good about myself because I feel like I've had the opportunity to digest it as close as I am to this, working with this body. But I do think, having people have a little bit more time would have been a good thing. But ready to move forward.
Thank you, sir. Any others? Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments everyone has made, and I agree, particularly with the comments that Mr. Anderson just made. Just wanted to say I'm very happy to see that we added like access to natural resources under purpose. I think that's really important, and the new comp plan is certainly going to address that also. I'm the one who put in the workforce housing. For people who aren't aware of what workforce housing is, basically it's housing that's affordable for what's up between 80 and 120% of what's called the median income, and that's established by the feds. For right now, I just looked the numbers up tonight. A family of 4, the maximum income on that is $108,000. So it's in between. It's that middle class that's getting left out of housing. I'd like to see a little bit of incentive for that, and that's why I put that in there with up to 10 single-family houses exempted on that during the year. But the other changes that were made, I think, excuse me, make a lot of sense. And I understand people's, I mean, this is typical. I've been on the council for 6 years. This is my 7th year. And, people don't get involved until the very end usually. And they lose track of, or they don't see, or they don't know, or they aren't paying attention to everything that's gone on before. I would also put as part of the timeline that Counselor Gleisteen laid out is that, we were hit at the beginning of the year we ran out of building permits, bang. And it's like, wow, we have an issue here. So that was part of what I think drove, us being, having to, let's do something rather than patchwork it, then let's take care of this, let's do it. And I will be supporting this tonight also. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Turn your mic on.
I think another thing worth discussing and sharing is that, I think there's a lot of concern about growth, especially outside of our designated high growth areas. And I think this actually does a good job kind of containing and directing that growth where we want to see it, or where we want to see it as in accordance with our 2006 comprehensive plan and with the new one that's still in draft, which is really targeting growth in the Crossroads Planning Development District. So making some exemptions and exceptions there to kind of target the growth there is really, in alignment with our comp plan, which is one of the key requirements for this ordinance to be in place. So I think it makes sense, and I think it's a good direction to go into. I think providing a little bit more wiggle room in terms of growth there with that 30% increase is good, because I think that again is just going to allow for further development in the higher growth areas, which is where the town has decided that's where we want it to be. So I think that's a good thing. And hopefully that means we'll get a downtown a little bit faster, because we'll be able to see the residential development there that will actually help to spur the economy down there, to get that downtown area there for residents, which I think is what everybody's really looking forward to and wants to see as part of the Downs.
Councilor Gleisteen?
Yeah, so I have a point of information. So you said, Chair Johnson, you said you're going to bring an amendment. Is that going to be before or after the vote for the main motion?
Well, I have to amend it before we vote on it. So I would amend the main motion before we vote on it. Yep. So the amendment's going to be a whole separate vote. Yep.
Okay, so is that something that you're going to do fairly soon, or?
Yeah, I was just waiting for everybody to have their time. The few councilors have not spoken yet, so.
Okay, and then we're going to speak again about the amendment? Is that?
Yep, if you want to, yeah.
Yeah. So
And then the main motion as amended, if you want to.
I just had one quick comment, because I had a lot of notes, and I just, there is a lot of good work and there's a lot of good in this. So I didn't, I wanted to make sure it wasn't, that I, am solely opposed to everything that's been done. So, I do appreciate all the time and work that people have put into it. Obviously, I have some differences around the process. I do think debating whether or not to delay this for a couple of weeks would have been good to hear from counselors of why or why not they didn't think we should do that. I think the public probably would have appreciated hearing that. Some of my concerns are, Jay, even this last week, has been out of town. I still probably have some legal issues. Maybe you guys have been running stuff past legal unbeknownst to the other counselors, but I'm not quite sure what it means to cap an exemption, from a legal standpoint. And I think I had a couple of other legal issues as well. Just a few process things about how, maybe some of the points don't quite meet up with our ordinances right now. So we don't have a definition of workforce ordinance right now, as Jean Marie knows. I called her right away, was in favor of doing this. But I think, there's more work to that than people realize. We also have, we have fractionalization in our zoning. So I guess that won't impact, but as someone mentioned, there's a lot of things that kind of go together there. So I do still have some concerns and questions, and I guess I'm just a slower thinker, maybe than the rest of you. So I do personally need more time to digest this, but I did just want to comment that I do feel like there is a lot of good work done. I haven't been happy, and I'm still not happy with the process. But these things are tough, and no process is ever going to be perfect. So I wanted to say that in my vote, that I won't say how I'm going to vote yet until I hear the amendment. But that I just want to get those points out there.
Councilor Hamel?
I don't know for sure, but I think that if we waited to satisfy everybody on this matter, we would see the next ice age first. You know, so, and you've heard the discussion, you've heard the debate, you've heard the questions, the appeals for more time, you know, all sorts of other parliamentary maneuvers with no notice. And I have to say that even opponents, folks that opposed this a couple of weeks ago, say that the proposed revised GMO is better than the one in place. Not perfect, not going to stop growth. It will help us to flatten the curve. It will correct a number of things that delivered close to 1,200 units over the past 3 to 4 years. That's the thing we're trying to solve. We cannot stop growth. You know, they talk about when people are dealing with change, they typically they start with a position of uninformed optimism. We started with informed pessimism. Nobody liked this. And I think part of it is definitional. You hear growth and people say, why would we vote in favor of anything that says growth in it? Well, you've got to decide one way or the other. You know, we've had a hard time getting past that trigger, that buzzword, and maybe that's reflective of the time that we're in. Okay, so you know, many people wish for a simpler time and wish growth would stop and just go away and let us live the life that we all dreamed of here. And we frankly are not in that environment now. So this GMO is better than the one that's in place, period. We made time and opportunity for amendments to come forward. And that was the purpose of moving from the last meeting to today. Another 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you know, is it really ever going to move the needle, you know, that much more in the favorable direction? No, we actually were elected to make decisions, you know, difficult ones, unpopular ones. And that's where we are. I'm in favor of this. You've heard that the recent amendments have been an improvement. There are still a lot of things about it that I think need to be improved. My preference would have been to have the downs dealt with entirely separately. You heard the head of the planning board say he supports this as an improvement over the one that's in place. I don't really know what more support you need to get for what's before us now. So I'm in favor of this. I say we move on. We've been saying the same thing for 3 or 4 weeks. And, you know, for the folks that have been closest to this for over 1.5 years, the plain fact of the matter is, and I was in this spot before I ran for office, people tend not to focus on something until it's on an agenda. And then this is an issue that is very, very complicated. And it's not because we designed it that way. It's the way it's evolved. And so we've done the best we can with what we know, and you know, however imperfect, it's an improvement, and I'm in favor of incremental progress.
Thank you. Before I offer my amendment, I guess I'll just comment with the rest. You know, in regards to the public process, I think we've kind of watched the public process play out. To me, the public process has worked, right? We've yelled at each other, we screamed at each other, the public's yelled at us, we've yelled back. Right. And we've come to a conclusion that the vast majority, it appears, is at least comfortable enough to say, hey, I can defend this and I can support this. And so, you know, I agree. We in the beginning, we could have done a better job of educating. But I guess I would just say to my fellow members of the Finance Committee, we just had a public hearing on the budget that had 0 people. Right. And so when we fast forward a couple of weeks, just remember the efforts you guys have made to educate, and just remember that, and that's not a knock on anybody. I mean, this is, you know, Councilor Gleason loves to say local government rocks. I'm enjoying myself, right? I understand that we might get heated and the public, you know, doesn't necessarily agree with us all the time, but that's precisely why we came to the conclusion we did. We were pulled in different directions. We did meet in the middle. And to me, this is the public process. Now, yes, I am a firm believer it's time for this public process to end. Because I'm very comfortable with it. And I can respect that people disagree with me on that. That's completely fine. Quick personal note, Councilor Johnson's been here for 39 years. I feel like I've been here for 37 years. So I don't think we're related, I guess. I don't know. but I started my journey in Scarborough. We lived in Coach Lantern, right? We lived in Coach Lantern, which by the way, Coach Lantern, which is a multifamily unit, is now a fabric of Old Millbrook, right? And we lived in Coach Lantern because my parents couldn't afford a house in Scarborough. And so they saved but that was when rents were reasonable. And then we bought a 820 square foot split level on Aston Drive. And then my parents moved to something that was way too big for them and way too expensive. And I went to college and we went our separate ways. And now they've downsized to Juneberry, right? And just on a personal note, I feel like that path in Scarborough is gone right? And so I am trying to create a path like that for people in Scarborough, because right now I don't think we have it. And so there's a lot of friction there, right? Because now, if you live in Juneberry, you don't want those whippersnappers in Coach Lantern, and I respect that, right? And sometimes we have to take ourselves out of the constituent point of view and look at a broader policy point of view, and we're trying. That's personally what's driving me. I just want to piggyback on what Councilor Anderson said. The bottom line is we're averaging about 92 units throughout town that are single family homes. This only is allowing 85. And what that does is that's actually more restrictive, and that's specifically more restrictive for Oak Hill, Pine Point, Higgins Beach, West Scarborough. The RF zones are only allowed 30 houses a year, right? And again, that's below our average. And to answer, Ms. Bristol, to answer your question, by giving the CPD 30% of it, it's not subdevelopment. So in the whole shebang, they get 30% of 144 permits. So let's round that to 42. Right? And that's actually a very clever mechanism to take things out of the annual allocation and put them in a high growth area, and then further restrict the neighborhoods that we're also so desperately trying to protect. So there are mechanisms in there that was a strategic move. And I compliment Councilor Anderson for, I think that was his brainchild. I'll take this real quick. And lastly, not all units are created equal. I know 500 is scary, but 500 was the beacon, and there's other things. And so I think as we move forward, one of the most frustrating parts is not all units is equal. So when we do look at these huge numbers, there's different impacts, and those impacts have been studied. We do know the cost to serve. We do have, the beacon will be in next week or next month, and they're going to tell us literally the people that live there, how many kids, how many traffic trips, whether they turn left or right out of the beacon, their median income. There's all sorts of things we're going to hear about the beacon. So tune into that, because that will tell you why we think all units are not equal. Some fun things, or some, by the way, I wholeheartedly traffic and access to beaches. I care about those, and I know we're in trouble with those. I want to make that very clear. I think we've spent so much time trying to defend things that I think all 7 of us are concerned about those. There are times I can't go to the beach. We know those are very real issues. But I did want to take a moment to plug there is a $13.5 million traffic improvement project that's happening. It's going to be roughly, I think $8 million is going to be funded by the Downs. And we're going to fund somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 out of a designated account. So that doesn't get past the taxpayer. So $13.5 million, that's a lot of money. And that's going to be dictated by the Department of Transportation. And so that's not us just kind of saying, I don't like Oak Hill, right? Those are the professionals doing it. And that's projects that are indirectly funded by our CEA, right? So if we look at what we're giving back to the developer, they are now going to have to lay out $6 to $7 million towards that 13 million that we're not laying out. So as that comes on, I think it's great education to say, hey, where's that money coming from? That's where it's coming from. So that's my little story. If there's no further discussion, I will offer my amendment. Councilor Gleistein mentioned a meeting that John Clucci and I had with the Downs folks, and she is correct. And let me first pull up the way it reads to just kind of level set. And I'm speaking solely for myself. This is my amendment. So I'm not speaking as the majority of the council here. So I will let everybody debate where we are. So as of right now, one of the objectives we had going into this was to, quote, make everybody whole. I think Councilor Johnson has said it a few times. If you change the rules of the game, we got to make everybody whole. And So right now we are saying, hey, if it's multifamily only, we're going to give you 100 units. And that's going to expire in 2023. And I think that was a genuine good faith effort by at least the majority of us to try to make these guys whole, to say, hey, let's get them right, and then we can move on. I personally was not 100% comfortable with the 2023, because if we sunsetted that at 2021, that forces them to come get exemptions starting in 6 months, right? So we kind of gave them this big runway. And it's pretty well defined what is approved right now and what they have working on. So I'll pull up the crux of, this was the crux of the meeting we had. Mr. Bacon had sent us an email and trying to detail this. And I think it got a little bit lost when all our conversation, I think everybody will agree, this got a little bit lost. So let me try to zoom in right here.
So Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm on the Zoom and normally your screen, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I haven't shared it yet. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Give me 1 second. I just accidentally literally changed the boundaries. Let me not.
Yeah, can you get rid of my head?
Let me close those. No, let me not save that. Hold on. That could have gotten interesting. Oh, touch mode is enabled. Okay. So if you're bear with me, Betsy, I'll bring it up here. 1 second. Just share my screen. And can we include a real computer in the budget, by the way? Is that something that we can make happen? It's worse than the school issued laptops.
Chrome?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on. I'm zooming. Okay. So this, by the way, is, so I'm zooming in to, hold on, let me try to make this bigger so everybody can see. Bear with me, because I don't want, let me close this nonsense. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, so this is, just so everybody knows, it's not some willy-nilly number. This comes from a place. If we are looking here at the Crossroad Plan District, and you will see, if we orient ourselves right here, this is essentially creeping up onto, this is our town residential area. And all of this has been approved by the planning board, I believe. Is that correct? Plan development has, yeah. And so this is what we're looking at. This is, if you see my cursor, we're looking at this area right here. And we're also looking down here, these two little neighborhoods. And essentially these guys, if you look at everything in yellow, they contend they need 170 growth permits. And part of those 170 growth permits, there's 2 multifamily units right here that add up to, or several multifamily units that add up to 72 units, right? So those are 72 multifamily units. And then they have this back road here, which is primarily due to infrastructure. They need infrastructure. They want some houses along this area, right? That is not included what I am suggesting. And they are looking, and I can have Dan Bacon absolutely clear this up, but there's also these townhouses right here. And there's 18 of those, I believe. There's 18 townhouses here. So there's 36 units here. There's 18 right here, 72. So that brings us to 90 permits total. There's a little section down here of what is called micro homes or mini homes. I don't think they're tiny houses. I think that's the wrong word, but there's smaller homes, which is down here in the southern corner. So the gist of this meeting that we had was the Downs folks said, hey, we understand where you're coming from, but we also have heard, or actually say, I should say I have heard, I've heard that the multifamily was giving some people some heartburn. So essentially what I'm proposing is we strip away all of that. 104 units gets us to the built out unit, the area that I just said. But what it also does is I want to sunset it on 2021. So I want to sunset this in 6 months, which essentially says, hey guys, you got 6 months to do what is planned. And if you don't, you're in the pool with everybody else and you can come to an exemption later. So I'll pull up my, And again, I think it's important. Remember, I'm just not making that number up. That is a meeting from these guys. And again, I don't want to, they're standing in front of me, so I don't want to get combative. They contend they need 170. So I'm proposing that we scratch 6G as written. And it's pretty simple. It says a maximum of 104 dwelling units within the Crossroad Plan District. What does that do? It gets away from the multifamily qualifier. You add up everything I just looked at, it comes to 104. What it doesn't do is that back road, that back infrastructure, it doesn't give them permits for those single family housing. There's other single family housing that I'm living out. Hold on, let me finish. And then this expires at the end of this year. So if you truly have these in the pipeline, if you truly need these, you have 6 months to execute on them, and then you're playing by the same rules as everybody else. So that's my motion, that's my amendment to strike 6G and to replace it with this. With that, take a second, and then you want to ask a question? You want to do that? Okay.
No,
Do-
yeah, I've got, the way you've structured this amendment, I'm confused.
Okay, well, let me get a second first.
Oh, second.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
okay. All right, question.
Sorry. So you're striking the whole stuff with multifamily dwelling units?
I am. I'm
Okay.
striking the whole thing with multifamily unit, because they're essentially held to that plan that I just showed, right?
Gotcha.
So it's not like I'm saying, hey, here's 104. In fact, Councilor Clucci has mentioned, if we want to add to this language and even reference that picture, we can do that or something, or include this with the public record. But yes, I'm striking all that.
I just
I'm
wanted to
saying,
be
hey,
clear. You're
this is what
striking
you're
that.
having.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so with that, I
Thank you.
apologize. So I'll open up floor for my amendment. So we're just talking about that amendment. Councilor Clucci.
Yeah, I support this. Like you said, it's quite a bit more restrictive than what they requested. What they proposed to us, the language, like you said, it referenced the planning board document that I wasn't comfortable with, because I feel like this is, if it's in the ordinance, that's the law. You can't refer to something that's subservient. And I think what you put on the board is a perfect way to introduce it into the record. This is the town center residential as it exists today that we're referring to, where you're exempted for 104 permits.
Mhm.
Or 100, yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
So if this request had occurred any place but within the Crossroads Planning District, then how would it be handled? How would we handle that?
Well, I think the issue here is I think admittedly, we're trying to level set this ordinance, right? So this is really just a mechanism to level set this ordinance, right? The reality of it is, if somebody needs 104 permits moving forward, they're gonna have to come to the council for a council exemption. So I think it's fair to say that this is us granting them an exemption for 6 months specifically to what they have laid out. And then said, okay, hey, come January 1st, you're playing by the rules that have been laid out.
Yeah.
So, Councilor Gleisteen?
Yeah, so I have a question on that, and then another question. So if that's the case, why don't we just have them come for an exemption? Why put it into the GMO to expire in 6 months? So, that's one of my questions. Since it's your amendment, maybe you want to answer it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you look at the amount of detail that they have submitted to us, I think they have submitted something that is very comparable to what would be submitted anyways if they asked for an exemption. And I will be 100% honest. I think that the decision, whether it's now or after this takes effect, would be the same. And to me, this is a way of us taking care of this now, giving us some breathing room to finish the budget, watch the GMO play out for 6 months, and then continue from there. So to me, this is just as much us as it is them. Probably more so us at this point, but.
So what happens in the transition? So is that the 48 that we captured for permits they already have for the first half of the year? I mean, it's kind of a difficult transition, but what are we doing with the transition, the permits that are already been granted for 2021?
So we talk about the 48, right?
Yeah, so that is the 48 then, right?
So they keep them. They still have them. We can't take somebody's permit back that we've granted to my knowledge.
Okay, so we're doing, so in the end then, they'll get This 104, and then they already have, how many?
I don't know how many they have in their possession. I think that's something we could ask them if you want to.
Yeah, and so then, since the old ones were fractionalized, will they still be fractionalized under the, under this plan, the ones they already have?
So if you have a permit, you have a permit. You can go build. So yes, what was issued under the existing ordinance is as it was issued.
So what number is that then? So if this is 104 additional, so what number, how many units are under the old system to be added to this?
I don't have that answer.
Under the old system, I don't know, because frankly, we're trying to do away with it. So I guess,
No, for 2021. So what's the total look like?
well, I know the 72 multifamily would be approximately 36 of our old permits, approximately.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe Dan can answer.
Oh, this is on. Dan Bacon, Crossroads. This year, the growth permits that we've pulled so far this calendar year was, I believe it was 18 or 20. So there's one 30-unit condo development that's under construction right now. It was 1 and 2 bedrooms. So I think it was 2/3 of 30. So around 20.
So you pulled about around 20 under the new system.
They were pulled, I think, the 1st of this January, because actually last year permits ran out. So they were going to be pulled last calendar year. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, just to further, I think Councilor Gladstein, when you proposed the change to the way we were originally adding 50 units at the end of the ordinance, or 50 permits, and with the exemptions, I thought you had provided that number to us. I think 18 of them were resulting from the downs that would have been exempted otherwise. And then the other 30 were 1 bedrooms that would have been
That's
exempted
true.
otherwise. So I think that's the number, actually.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, Councilor Katarina?
I'm sorry, I'm going back to the wording of this. And it comes from my old days of drafting legislation, I guess. So if you're striking that whole multifamily dwelling units up through Crossroads Plan Development District and starting with the maximum, that means you're giving a maximum of 104 dwelling units to anyone. Are you limiting, is your intent to limit this to the Crossroads?
It says a maximum of 104 dwelling units within the Crossroad Plan District.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's
Thank
specific.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Do
you.
you want me to pull it
It
up
was
again? I can
spaced.
pull it up again. It's
That was
fine.
it. No, that's good. Spacing. I spaced on that portion. Thank you.
Call the vote.
So I have another question.
Yeah, go. Sure.
So how many units are in Crossroads now, and how many are under construction?
I'm gonna assume Dan Bacon can continue to answer these because you're right here. And I believe we could also pull up Councilor Clucci's dashboard that has all this as well, but multifamily, yeah.
So all I can tell you is what's actually happening at the Downs, but you're looking at a couple calendar years of when the permits were actually pulled.
Right.
So right now, we have Tandem Court condominiums, which are 2-bedroom units, 24 units. Occupancies will start next week. There are 24 there. We have Gables condominiums. There are 30 units. Those are also 2-bedroom units. Occupancy will be starting this fall on those. They're all fully sold out. We have 23 house lots under construction. 3 of those are not sold. The rest are all sold. So occupancies are starting actually June 1st on those. We have 60, well, actually it's 58 1- and 2-bedroom apartments at Hayloft. That's under construction right now. Occupancy start on that, I believe. Help me out, Dan. I think it's August 1st. It's July 1st. So there are 5 buildings there. One of those buildings actually has commercial space on the first floor as well. So that's what's under construction for residential right now at the Downs.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I didn't write it all down, but it's about 130 units.
Okay, thank you. And then there was, before that, this latest construction, there's like 44 or something.
I didn't hear the question.
I don't know.
With
You asked
your
her.
phase 1, it was 100 and something units there as well, right?
So, yeah, 126 in phase 1. I did leave out the affordable housing project that's being built right now. That's 39 units. It's under construction.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can we move the question?
Yep. Cody?
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Amendment passes. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to the main motion as amended, which if anybody would like some last words or more debate, we are in the main motion as amendment. I have no more amendments. I don't think anybody else does. Okay, none? All right. Cody?
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
No.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 20, actually, without objection, I'm going to take a 7-minute break. We'll reconvene at 8:48. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. I'm just going to pause real quick to make sure Councilor Glycine is in here. Okay, there she is. With that, we're going to resume the meeting. We are now on to order number 21045. It's an act on the request to approve the names posted on various committees and boards by the Appointment and Negotiations Committee on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. And excuse me, this is sponsored by Councilor Hamel.
Yes, thank you. I should pull up my computer here for that. Bear with me 1 minute.
It's not easy, is it, being on the spot?
No, it's not.
And you're not
that's why
controlling,
we
and you're not controlling everything.
That's why we should never take breaks. Okay, no, I got it right here. Thank you very much. This was the product of a recent Appointments and Negotiations Committee meeting. You may recall that we read these names at first notice in the last town council meeting, and this reading will fulfill the 2-meeting requirement. This was posted on April 21st. For the Board of Assessment Review, appoint David Bork as full voting member with a term to expire in 2022. I might add, for the last meeting that I saw him I think he's also on the CBA. He was calling in from Tahiti. Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee, move Andrew Fortunato from the first alternate to full voting member with a term to expire in 2022. Long Range Planning Committee, move Corey Fellows from second alternate to first alternate with a term to expire 2021. Appoint Robin Saunders as the second alternate position with a term to expire 2021. Pest Management Committee, appoint Roger Chabot as the Recreation Advisory Board representative to this committee with a term to expire 2023. Senior Advisory Board, move Elise Bolda to a full voting member with a term to expire in 2021. Appoint Carol Nelson as the first alternate to fill a term to expire 2021. Sustainability Committee, appoint Thomas Loader as the second alternate with a term to expire in 2022. Transportation Committee, appoint Portia Hirschman to the full voting position with a term to expire 2022. And finally, Zoning Board of Appeals, appoint Leroy Crockett as the second alternate position with a term to expire in 2023. Thank you and good luck to all of those newly appointed individuals. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Caterina?
Just very quickly, thank you to everyone who's willing to serve on committees and boards. It's really very important work that's done in the town, and I appreciate people's time.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I had a similar comment. It feels like we've had a flurry of people stepping up to volunteer lately, and I think it's encouraging for me. I'm glad to see it and appreciate it.
Councilor Glycine?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. So when I first came on the council, we were told that, it was really hard to get people. There was a lot of very incomplete information put out. We didn't push it. We didn't publicize it. We've made a lot of improvements in that, and I think it's paid dividends, that we're getting more people interested. We're getting new people interested. We're changing, process and procedures to say, hey, if you've been on for a long time, that's great. Tell us if you want to stay, but there's going to be new folks coming on that will have a chance at some of these seats. So it was one of those things where, we talk about the public a lot, and we say, well, they don't speak up, they don't do this. But, when you do things the right way, sometimes you do get changes. And we've been doing this the right way. We have a nice big button on the homepage now. And we have publicized this. This was something specifically the Communications Committee worked on when I was on it. So I just say it's great, and I'm glad it's really working. And I think it's a positive change for the town.
Tony?
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Glycine?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Councilor Katerina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Now on to new business. Order number 21046 is a first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendment to Chapter 311 Town of Scarborough Schedules of Fees. Mr. Hall?
Yes, historically, this schedule of fees would be part of the budget approval process. And in fact, this year, there are a number of fees that my staff is proposing that we increase. They're included here. Essentially, they are in the areas of police department, public works, and fire. I would also ask that you consider adding an additional one that escaped my mind until the planning director reminded me. Based on your actions with the growth management ordinance, we no longer need to have the growth management fee because they are tied to the building permit fee. So it's certainly opportune for us to do that kind of housekeeping as part of this. So in addition to what's put before you this evening, I would respectfully ask that you also include the removal of the growth management fee. And again, just to be clear to the public, that doesn't mean that fee was always actually went toward the building permit fee, which we still charge. So there's no negative impact. We're not doing away with it entirely, but we're just changing it, converting it to building permit only.
Questions for Tom before we put it on the floor? Councilor Gleason?
Yeah, so Tom, so in the past, I mean, I think like you said, it applied to a building permit and some of these fees, I guess are somewhat arbitrary, but isn't there time spent by staff, you know, administering the growth permit system? I mean, I guess I'm not quite sure why we wouldn't try to account for that. You know, especially we maintain a wait list, you know, which, you know, maybe hopefully when we revisit the ordinance, we'll revisit that whole process because that pretty much fills out the whole next year before we even get there. So was there any thought given to, you know, just a fee to get a growth permit?
And frankly, with the reporting requirements you've now imposed on staff, I think there's going to be more staff time than we have historically. So yes, there is staff time associated with the administrative process here. I'm not in a position to offer that up. I brought that to you just more out of coincidence and timing. Perhaps we can not take that up in first reading. I can consider it and provide a recommendation at second reading if you like.
That would be great.
Gonna do that?
They actually have administrative fees. They do actually have administrative fees that they implement downstairs in the planning and codes office, whether it's related, I believe that like for processing electoral permits, various fees that they collect through for different permits. And
But to the councilor's point, it may well be that we should impose a modest fee that is reflective of staff costs relative to the processing of growth permits. I'm just not in a position to offer up an advice in that regard tonight.
I think that's fair. Councilor Clucci?
I might be able to speak a little bit to the progression. So we initially had a fee specific, I think it was $200 to the growth management permit. This was after Jay had suggested that we didn't need it because now we're issuing the growth permit and the building permit at the same time. So it used to be that was just a placeholder and that would get credited to the building permit, that, as we said. So, but I think when I went back, it was eventually removed from the ordinance. The fee, I guess, is what I'd say, is because it seemed that before the reporting requirement was added in, the administrative cost was either kind of covered elsewhere or was de minimis or minimal.
So Jay did recommend we remove it, so you removed it.
Yeah.
But that was before we did the reporting aspect.
That's correct.
So perhaps we get more educated on the reporting aspect and deal with that later. Okay. So motion. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. And discussion on this. It sounds to me nobody's offering amendment about the growth permit until the town manager reports back. Any more discussion? Okay, Tony?
Just if I could, one thing you could do is actually remove it from here because I think it is potentially complicated by the fact that we may arguably, but I think you actually should remove the growth permit fee. I will come back to you perhaps with a proposal to add something in its place, but I think it's important just to stay consistent with the practice, I think that's embedded in section 405 of the ordinance that has the fee applicable to the building permit.
So I can try to wing this, I guess. I'd like to motion that we remove the growth permit fee from the schedule of fees.
What page is it on? I'm sorry.
I don't believe it's included with what's.
Okay.
On what we've got.
Okay. Second, okay. Discussion on the removal of the growth permit fee. Excuse me.
Just remember, this will come back to us at second reading
Yeah.
with as amended language.
Yep.
We'll include it.
Okay. All right, to vote on the amendment. Tony?
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Amendment passes. Thank you.
Motion as amended. I'm going to call the vote.
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you.
Order number 21047, act on the request pursuant to MRSRA Title 38-1105 from the Scarborough Sanitary District to appoint Michael Stein to the Sanitary District Board of Trustees to fill the term expired 2021 due to the resignation of Ben Viola. Tom, can you?
Yes, in this instance of a vacancy on the sanitary district board, state law prevails or directs what to do in that instance. And essentially, you do replace, fill that seat, and that person serves until the next, help me out, Tony, until the next regular election, which would be November this fall. And in this case, Mr. Michael Stein has previously expressed interest in serving and is recommended by the trustees that you do appoint him to that. Then he'll have to run for that seat in November.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? Counselor Glystein?
I have a question. So did someone run against Mr. Viola or,
I think he's the one that resigned.
right, did someone run against him when he won?
There was no contest the year he ran.
Okay, thank you.
Any more?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Tony?
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 21048, it's act. So just so we're clear, there's no two readings. This is an act on the request to authorize the town council's communication committee to undertake an RFP process for the purposes of conducting a community-wide survey in the fall of 2021. Counselor Johnson, I'll let you make the motion and tee it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we all know that it's been 20 years since we've had our last, what we would consider a community-wide survey back in the gross services effort back in 2000. And out of that came lots of information to help drive a lot of policy decisions, zoning, comp plan, growth management. And we think it's time to have that happen again. So the communication committee is seeking just approval, as a council sanctioned approval to go out for an RFP for an outside vendor that does this for a living and will help us shepherd through this process to grab a broad range of topics from the community, their sentiment, to again help us with policy and a deeper understanding of the people that live in the town of Scarborough now. And it can go anywhere from quality ratings to importance ratings to community design. This is one of my favorite, local government. Do they serve you? Can't wait for that result. But growth and service satisfaction. So the communication, I've met with staff. We've met with an outside vendor just for some guidance and some insight as to what's available now. It was a great discussion, but they're a full digital platform. And our population in the town is not fully digitized. We also met with the Muskie School of Communication, got some good insight to them. Actually, one thing that I recall from that is that the paper survey is actually making a comeback. A lot of people are migrating to, they do like to sit down, take the time and answer the questions. So this request is just to get the blessing of the council to proceed with that. And still vetting out the RFP. We're drawing up a draft for a communication committee meeting on the 24th, and any council member is welcome to come join and give some insight.
We already have some more. If we had mentioned
Yes, we do have some money for this. This money was approved 3 years ago. We've held on to it tight. We not sure what the cost of this effort is, but we're very mindful of a budget. And we're hoping that we can pull it off with what we have. If not, then we might come ask for some help.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Council Clucci?
I think it's great, and it's the right way to go about it. It's something we've been talking about for years, since that funding was allocated. So I'm glad you're moving it forward.
So a quick question, because it was $10,000, right? I remember Council Hamlin and I, it was our first, one of our first. I mean, I don't think that's going to get the job done, right? Is there, Tom, have we included any of it in the budget process or?
I have no additional funding in the FY22 budget, but certainly there is time to make that
Yeah,
adjustment.
so I guess one of the things that we might consider at second reading, if that's something that you, like, maybe with the RFP, maybe we'll have an idea.
Yes.
Yeah, so that might be something you would sponsor at second reading to say, hey, I need another $7,000 for the, so I just wanted to say that to.
No, we appreciate it. And John Anderson, Councilor John Anderson is on the communication committee, is also on the finance committee. So he is actually our liaison from that committee to that committee. So there's an awareness there. We should know a little bit more shortly.
But it might be
before
like a
budget.
second reading
Yeah.
amendment, is what I'm just trying to say. Just,
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Glycine and then, oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Hamel,
Just
then Councilor
one
Glycine.
point of information. This was originally appropriated, I think, in 2019. So, I mean, we've been,
I
by
get it.
Jean Marie, and
Yeah, I
actually, I
get
think they rounded it up. It was originally 5,000, it got rounded up to 10. So maybe like building supplies, you know, it's inflation, so we need to adjust this too. But I'm pleased to see that this may actually have an outcome.
Councilor Glycine?
So is the RFP free? Or, I mean, I've done RFPs before with professionals that cost money. So is it free?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. The RFP is just a request for proposal. We're going out to existing vendors and we'll post in the public,
So
certain
who's-
publications.
So who's doing the details of the RFP? You guys are putting together the.
We've got a draft of an RFP that we're going to be reviewing and kind of workshopping, and we may even have a workshop after that. And again, all councilors are welcome to come to it as the starting point, and that will be on the 24th of this month. Hoping to get that out by the end of June.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I think, there's definitely some important issues in town to survey on.
Correct.
You probably missed the boat on some things, like the GMO and the comp plan. I was looking at the way they did survey for the Cape Elizabeth comp plan, and it was very it was professionally done. There were a certain number of people that were reached out to, so I'll be interested to see. And I'm familiar with another survey that was done for another town that you engaged a group who could make these surveys statistically meaningful, in terms of reaching out to certain segments and certain populations and how they got responses. And that was one thing that they did to Cape Elizabeth. So, I think before it's kind of been, we've sent them out and, whatever we get back, or whoever showed up at a meeting in the Plan-A-Palooza for the comp plan. So as we talk about this going further, I really hope that we see a statistically valid survey that reaches out to a lot of different groups that maybe, I don't want to say it will ever speak for the whole town, but that, it's not just whoever answers it type thing.
No, that's a good question, and that will be part of our RFP process. We'll want to know from whoever is interested in doing this for us, how they operate, what are their methods. And true, we do want a statistical accurate survey, but we also want to make sure that anybody that wants to be participant in it, that they feel they were participant, because the first vendor we met with, very interesting, and they did a community-wide, very robust, I think I sent out the examples to a couple folks, of Sioux City, Idaho. And there are 135,000, population of 135,000, but their statistical sample was only 750. Now, I know that makes sense from a stats perspective,
Right.
but I also feel that I know the residents in the town and they want to feel like they were a participant. They don't want to hear, well, here are the results because we polled 125 people.
Yeah,
So there's that balance in there.
100%. Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes, no, I'm excited about this. I think it's gonna be great. One question I was just thinking, Ken, and again, we can probably save this for the RFP conversation as we work on it, but the survey that was done in the past, that's kind of the one we're looking at as a model potentially. Did that include the schools in it, or is this strictly town separate from schools? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was, the first one had, I've got the summary of the large one, because that one actually in 2000, there were 6,500 homes in the town of Scarborough, and that was all homes, that was apartments and everything. And we actually went out to every single one of them. The folks that did it, that are still around, they're in Portland. I've had discussions with them. They still have our material. And they went out to our apartment buildings like Coach Lantern, where we used to live, and actually got all the addresses so they could get everything out. We actually had a 39% return rate in that survey, which is just unheard of. So, but the thoroughness and the depth of the survey is definitely a concern of I think of everybody. We want as many people that want to be involved with us to get to that. And we're gonna let the professionals tell us how they're gonna do that. Okay, but definitely bring it up in a discussion on it.
Yep. Counselor Hamlin?
Yeah, I'd be very happy to welcome the input from Councilors Gleisten and Anderson in terms of their recent experience with surveys, but I don't want them to be disappointed if they don't receive a letter of invitation to submit bids for this RFP. Sorry, couldn't resist.
It'd be cheap.
It's free.
It's
Yeah,
free, right? With that, good, Tony?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Gleisten?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Item number 10 is standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Please raise your hand if you have any. Counselor Anderson?
So we did have another downtown committee meeting recently, and I would just suggest people watch it just because it was a fun one where people were really brainstorming the things they'd like to see in the downtown. It was actually the first time where I feel like we got a little bit away from process and really just let people talk and share what they wanted in the downtown area. And I think the chair is going to work with Tom on kind of putting together a value document that kind of encapsulates that as kind of a starting point. So when the consultant comes on board with the downs, they'll be able to take that as some input for helping develop their designs and everything. But I think it was just really good to hear from the residents, because they really were just sharing as residents what they wanted in the downtown. And it was just a really good meeting, I think, to hear from folks.
Just Councilor Anderson, I was a bit surprised to go home at lunch and read the leader, and the suggestion was the committee was, recommending all these things, and that is not the way it happened. So we may need to do some follow-up. I think I was the one that tongue-in-cheek mentioned a carousel.
It was a Ferris wheel.
Did it get
Ferris wheel? I'm sorry. Thankfully, they didn't make print, but
it will next week.
Yeah, probably. So I just think it was a little mischaracterized in the article. We might want to do some follow-up.
That's all I had.
Town manager pushing his agenda again, Ferris wheels.
What will surprise you, I said it tongue in cheek, there were 3 or 4 people that jumped right on it. I was like, well, really.
Any others? Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, just as an FYI, speaking of CPD, there's on the 24th on the planning board, there's an agenda item on the assisted living facility, which is a pretty significant facility. Might be worth tuning in to hear it. And just as a side note, I went over to the Downs a couple of weeks ago and met some pretty irate neighbors. And turned out there was just a misunderstanding. So, and you find that with a lot of folks. They're just, folks react to what they know. And unfortunately, at times they just don't have the full picture. So we as council somehow have got to do a better job. Hopefully we're getting better for sure. But to the downtown committee, one individual was very upset because there was continuous building in the downtown center. There was no progress being made on it. And they moved to the downs for the center. A lot of people have. I mean, that concept does attract a lot of people. So I just educated them a little bit about the resident downtown committee. They had never heard of it. Well, I actually got 2 emails from people that I spoke with that went, signed up for the e-newsletter and found your committee and have been watching ever since. It really appreciate. So it was just a little thing to let them know about that, but so thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Any more liaison reports? No? Okay, counselor comments? Any counselor comments? Seeing none, motion to, oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that put your mic on. I got my second shot today at the Downs, which was again an awesome experience. And you know, I just think it's been so great, everything that the town has done and the developers for kind of making that happen, and Maine Health and everyone. I think things are going to be slowing down there over the next month. I think I've heard, you know, the states and the federal government's going to be shifting to smaller locations. And so, you know, it's just been such a great experience, and I'm so proud that Scarborough was a part of it.
Any more? With that, motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Tony?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Glystein? Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Motion